Okay. So in our last lecture, we had begun discussing type 1 and type 2 superconductors, and we were trying to understand that what is the energy cost required for maintaining an interface which separates a normal region and a superconducting region. So basically what we had here was that what we saw was that if you apply, say, a magnetic field which is of the order of the critical field, then in the normal region, of course, the magnetic field is constant of the order of hc, and once it approaches the superconducting region, it will decay over a distance lambda. Okay, the hc will actually destroy the superconductivity in this region, but if it's getting screened out over a distance lambda, and then you have a superconducting state maintained out here. So this decay of the critical field over a distance lambda will give an energy which is equal to an energy loss which is equal to hc square into A, where A is the cross-sectional area of the interface. This interface has got an area A, into lambda. So A into lambda will be the volume element into the energy density, which is hc square. So this amount of energy is being lost from this region, and there is a gain in energy. The energy gain is because the superconducting state is defined by a superconducting order parameter xi. The entire superconducting state is given by one single order parameter xi, because everything is behaving in unison with every other particle in the system. So the entire system is given by one single wave function xi, and the square of the wave function is nothing else but the density of Cooper pairs inside the system. So deep inside the superconducting state, this xi square is equal to ns, but as you are approaching the superconductor interface, the xi this order parameter is going to fall, and it will fall over distance, which is the coherence length xi, the superconducting coherence length xi. So it is transforming from a superconducting state to a normal state, and it is this over this length xi, this Cooper pairs will undergo splitting over a distance xi. The Cooper pairs will split, and then they will form single electrons and ultimately become the normal state. So as it goes from the superconducting state to normal state, there is a gain in energy, because the free energy of the superconducting state is lower than that of the normal state. So this gain in energy is nothing else but hc square A into xi, and this leads to the energy difference that we came across, that the energy for creating or maintaining this interface per unit area, okay, the energy for per unit area A of the interface, is equal to hc square xi minus lambda. Minus lambda because that is the loss in energy, and plus xi is because of the gain in energy. So it is proportional to xi minus lambda. So for materials with xi greater than lambda, namely type 1 materials, the energy cost per unit area for maintaining the interface is hc square xi minus lambda. This is greater than 0. Okay, so what this says is that the energy cost for per unit area of the interface, where A is the surface area of the interface, this is positive. So therefore the free energy, the energy is minimized if A is small. Okay, because every system likes to go into a lowest energy state, so the energy for interface is minimized if A is small, because the energy E by A is greater than 0. Which means that if you take a type 1 superconductor, if this is your type 1 superconductor, then the only interface which is going to be present if this is your type 1 material, then the only interface is the boundary of the sample. You cannot do away with the boundary of the sample. Everything is superconducting, and the only interface which is present is the overall boundary and the surfaces of the sample. Nothing else is present. And for this system, E by A is greater than 0. The surface area is the minimal. It is given by the boundary of the sample. So these are type 1 superconductors, where everything is superconducting inside the material. Okay, the entire material is completely superconducting, and the moment you apply the critical magnetic field, it is going to uniformly transform from the superconducting state into the normal state. However, there are other types of materials which are type 2 superconductors. And in type 2 superconductors, if you look at the energy per unit cross-sectional area of the interface, per unit surface area of the interface, this is hc square by xi minus lambda. And in type 2 superconductors, xi is less than lambda. Now if xi becomes less than lambda, this energy for the interface becomes negative, or E is proportional to minus of A. Okay, A is the area of the interface. This is the area of the interface, and this is the energy for creating the interface. Energy for creating interface. So therefore, the energy of the system is minimized by creating a larger A. You can see that for type 2 superconductors, this is for type 2 superconductors, the energy of the system will be minimized if you start creating larger and larger interface areas. Okay, if you create the surface area, if you start making the surface area between normal and superconducting regions very large, that is better, because E becomes even more negative. Larger this value, larger the value of A, E is even more negative, so the system will become more and more negative. Okay, so in type 2 superconductors are characterized with lambda greater than xi, where the energy cost for creating an interface is negative and is proportional to the area of the interface. So the system likes to increase the surface area between normal and superconducting regions. Now this surface area between normal and superconducting regions, if this is your superconductor, the surface area between normal and superconducting regions cannot be increased just as it is, because you just have the boundary. So how do you increase the surface area between normal and superconducting regions? The surface area is increased in type 2 superconductors. You have the boundary of the superconductor. Now how do you start increasing the surface area between normal and superconducting regions? The surface area is increased by actually the superconductor breaking up into the superconductor actually starts breaking up into small cylinders which are normal. This entire superconductor starts breaking up into small regions. These are like small cylinders which are threading the entire superconductor, these have normal cores. Their cores are normal, but all around them they are surrounded by superconducting regions. So you have small normal cores which are generated inside the superconductor, and all these normal regions are surrounded by superconducting regions. So these are called as vortices. These are called as vortices in type 2 superconductors. There are very interesting structures which are generated inside the superconductor, and they basically are corresponding to increasing this surface area between normal and superconducting regions. You can see that the more, and these are really microscopic because the diameter of them is of the order of the coherence length. The diameter of these vortices is of the order of coherence length, okay, and it is actually twice the coherence length, and so they are in the range of few tens of nanometers, okay. And so the surface area, and you create multiple such vortices inside the superconductor, okay, and so the surface area drastically increases, okay. You increase the surface area greatly by breaking the superconductor into normal and superconducting regions, okay. And this is a characteristic of type 2 superconductors. The type 2 superconductors have a lambda which is greater than xi, okay, and in type 2 superconductors it goes from a complete one homogeneous superconducting state into a state where the superconductor has normal and superconducting regions. There are normal cores or cylinders of normal regions, which are microscopic cylinders of normal regions, almost like thin strings, okay. They are just few tens of nanometers thick, which are enclosed in a superconducting medium, and this creates multiple interfaces, okay. The interfacial area drastically increases as you create more and more vortices, and the energy keeps on getting minimized. The energy for creating this interface likes to become more and more minimum, so more and more vortices are generated inside the superconductor. And thus, of course, the generation of this it costs energy to create a vortex, and so you are actually providing this energy by applying a magnetic field. So vortices are not just like that created, they are created by applying a magnetic field because it costs energy to actually create a vortex. There is an energy cost required because you have to suppress the superconductivity inside these normal cores, and that requires a gain in energy, and that gain in energy has to come from somewhere. So the magnetic field that you apply helps to generate these vortices inside the superconductor. So this is the importance of type 2 superconductivity. And let us look at this type 2 superconductors. So in type 1 superconductors, where you have in type 1 superconductors, it is like a perfect diamagnet, and it becomes it loses superconductivity at the critical field. In type 2 superconductors, up till the lower critical field, the system does not have the magnetic field that you have applied is not sufficient to generate vortices inside the system. So the system remains like a perfect diamagnet. No normal regions are generated. But the moment you exceed the lower critical field, the system gains sufficient energy to start nucleating these normal cores inside. So what you see in black are these normal cores, okay. I am just showing you the top view of the superconductor, okay, and these normal cores are begin to get generated inside the superconductor. As you keep on increasing the magnetic field, this density of these normal cores increases, okay, and they generate the vortex state. Each of these is called a vortex, and the vortex state density, and as you increase the magnetic field, the density of vortices increases. Each of this circle is a vortex, okay, and you can create a vortex state inside the superconductor. And as you are losing the superconducting state and normal cores are being nucleated inside this superconductor, the diamagnetism is decreasing, because as long as if you have a perfect uniform superconducting state with no normal region, your diamagnetism is perfect. This is in the Meissner state. The moment you start bringing in normal regions and destroying the superconducting diamagnetic response, the diamagnetism decreases. And so you see that the diamagnetism decreases, and it gradually decreases until at upper critical field you have so much of normal regions which are generated, namely the vortices have come so close to each other that there is no superconductivity left inside the system and the system turns normal. So actually you start bringing these vortices close together as you increase the magnetic field until at Hc2 they are just touching each other, so that they all obliterate all the entire superconductivity from the material and the system turns normal. So this is how you have type 1 and type 2 superconductors, and the distinguishing feature between them is the length scale. The length scale actually defines what is type 1 and type 2. In type 1 superconductors, the coherence in type 1 superconductors, the coherence length is greater than xi, and in type 2 superconductors the coherence length is less than xi is less than lambda. Let me just repeat. In type 1 superconductors the coherence length is greater than lambda. Recall, coherence length is the size of the Cooper pair, or the distance over which superconductivity is lost when you approach a normal superconducting boundary, and lambda is the distance up to which magnetic field penetrates into the superconductor. Okay, so if xi is greater than lambda you have type 1, and if xi is less than lambda you have type 2. And this whole thing is actually characterized by a parameter kappa, which is lambda by xi. And when we do the GL theory, we will show that if lambda is greater than 1 by root 2 of xi, then you will have a type 2 superconductor, and if lambda is less than 1 by root 2 xi, this is type 1 superconductor. So again, one can use the same arguments, but one can show it explicitly through Ginzburg-Landau theory, that the actual way to characterize type 1 and type 2 is by using this ratio or the Ginzburg-Landau parameter kappa, which is lambda by xi. Okay, and if lambda is greater than 1 by root 2 of xi, you have type 2, and if it is less than this, you have type 1. Okay. So now in the next lecture, we will look at the vortex state in superconductors a little bit more closely, namely the vortex state in type 2 superconductors, to be more precise.